Okay. Let's call this meeting to order, everybody. We are live. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Ling,
Here.
Dr. Lee Corns,
Here.
Mr. Spadaro,
Here.
Mr. McKenna, Mr. Stepanovich,
Here.
Mr. Dice,
Here.
Mr. Lemak,
Here.
Mayor Sinan.
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Nestico, do we have any unlisted amendments this evening?
None for this evening.
Thank you. That brings us to our consent calendar items. Any questions about the consent calendar items? Hearing none, can I have a motion, please?
Dane, can I actually ask one quick one?
Sure.
It's not a big deal, but I see there's, in the accounts payable, do we pay 2 deer removal companies? Sorry.
We pay one deer removal company, and then we pay Waste Management for the disposal of them. So somebody does the pickup and somebody does, we pay another person.
Okay,
There's
thank you.
Two vendors.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, awesome. Any other questions or concerns about the consent calendar items? Hearing none, can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar items.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Jamie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to comments by the mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Dice. First of all, it's still curbside leaf collection program time. Republic Services will conduct the sweeps but you have to fill out the curbside leaf collection program form on the municipal website. It's under www.murraysville.com, and under About Us and select forms, permits, and map. There's a 20-bag limit each collection date. The deadline to sign up for each date is the Thursday before the pickup. Remember, if you don't sign up and they drive by your house, don't be disappointed. You have to sign up. The next 2 dates are Saturday, November 18th, and Saturday, December 9th. Next up, now hiring the Public Works. The municipality of Murraysville is seeking qualified applicants for the position of full-time skilled laborer within the Public Works Department. Although a CDL Class A license with the air brakes restriction removed is preferred, an applicant who does not possess the preferred license, once hired, will have 180 days to obtain a CDL Class A license with the air brake restriction removed. Applicants are required to lift 100 pounds and have the ability to work in extreme weather conditions for long periods of time. A high school diploma or a GED equivalent is required. This position also involves the availability for overtime hours, day or night. General construction, asphalt, masonry, and turf maintenance skills are preferred but are not mandatory. On the same line, we're now hiring part-time administrative assistant. The qualified person for this job performs a variety of routine and complex clerical, secretarial, and administrative work in keeping official records and providing administrative support to the Public Works Director and staff. The work will include telephone answering, typing, word processing, and record management. It's a part-time position with a somewhat flexible 16 to 20-hour-a-week schedule. Next up, we're having another glass pop-up collection event Saturday, December 2nd, 2023 at the Veterans Field parking lot, which is right up the road here, 4200 Sardis Road, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Residents are also encouraged to support the Loaves and Fishes emergency food program by donating non-perishable food items. Food pantry volunteers will be at the pavilion accepting drive-through donations during these same hours. Next, we just want you to be aware that the Duff Park 2 bridges down there are going to be closed for repairs November 20th until January 1st. Don't get near, because they're going to try to have them roped off. But if there's any questions, call our municipal engineering department. Again, they're getting pretty bad need of repair, so that's why we're having them fixed now. Next, we have Santa at Sardis coming up. The holiday celebration will be Saturday, December 2nd, 1 to 4 p.m. Sardis Park. Rocky Hill Lane, Murraysville. Join us at the park for s'mores, a bonfire, carriage rides, and Santa to kick off the holiday season. Parking is limited. Please park, carpool. Bring a chair to enjoy the bonfire. If you have any questions, contact our recreation department here at extension 131. Lastly, Murraysville Recreation's Hot Chocolate Hikes, Saturday, December 16th, Tomah Reserve, 10 a.m. Join the recreation department for some fun 2 to 3 mile hikes over the winter. These are wooded hikes with some slopes and may require terrain, stepping over fallen trees. Please dress for the weather and plan for the terrain. Again, if you have any questions, give a shout here to our recreation department, and that concludes my announcements for this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. That brings us to comments by the Chief Administrator. Mr. Nestico?
No further comments for this evening.
Okay, thank you. This brings us to community input, where residents can say whatever they like, so long as it is 3 minutes or less. Thank you. So we will go in order. The first is Miss Anna Schuley, and please just state your name and address into the microphone for the record. Okay. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Anna Schuley. My address is 2010 Heavens Lane, and that's in Export, Murraysville, PA.
Okay.
So I'm here to talk about the possible fracking into Duff Park, and I just want to voice my concerns about that. There's several houses that surround Duff Park, and they're all well-based houses. There's no actual municipal water that goes to those houses. So I'm afraid that it's possible that when they go in there, that the seismic activity and all the shaking could damage all these wells. And we tried to get the municipality of Murraysville to run water back there several years ago, but it was just not cost effective. So they had that tabled. So, I mean, I don't know if there would be some kind of precautions to make sure that these people still have water. And I didn't know if you were even aware of the houses that have the wells up there. Okay? That's my concern, so let's not put that in Duff Park if we can.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Okay, let's go on to Miss Laura Vincetti. And just state your name and address for the record. Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Laura Vincenti. I live at 127 Ridge Lane in Murraysville. Okay. Allegheny County Council voted to allow fracking in Deer Lakes Park. A group from Duquesne University conducted water quality assessments before and during the fracking process at 7 sites throughout the park. And fracking chemicals were found at the surface, which would then also mean it was found below the surface. And while there aren't any wells in the park, perhaps the concern stated earlier might be taken into serious consideration. And those surface chemicals are still active today. Subsequently, Allegheny County has now banned all fracking under the public parks. Now, it's been noted here before that Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution states that people have a right to clean air, pure water, and to the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. Pennsylvania's public natural resources are the common property of all the people, including generations yet to come. And I would imagine as council members, it is your duty to uphold the state constitution. Personally, I'm not a fan of fracking, but I recognize, I get it, it's a part of our lives today. But fracking under parkland is a different story. We deserve places where we can play and we can walk and we can hike and we can bike without worrying about the effects of what's going on beneath the surface. We deserve our parks to be fracking free. we can choose to continue to honor and preserve our public parks, or we can choose to sell them off, and the ground under the park is still part of the park. We can sell them off to the highest bidder. And I'd like to take a minute to talk about potential issues with the competitive bidding process. And I'm going to read this to make sure that I've got the language correct. Murraysville's competitive bidding ordinance specifies that contracts should go to the lowest responsible bidder, excuse me, or in the case where the municipality is the one selling something, the highest responsible bidder. The municipal code states the contract should go to a responsible bidder who, in competitive bidding situation, submits a bid which, as finally determined by council, is the best bid available in terms of price, product, and/or service quality, adherence to specifications, timeliness of delivery, serviceability, and maintenance, and other factors that council may establish. And the competitive bidding process defines a responsible bidder this way: a bidder who is considered responsible either through previous experience in business dealings with the municipality or through an investigation of the credit reliability and performance of the bidder. In the past 2 years, Murraysville has entered into at least 7 leases with Apex and Olympus to frack under Pedora Park, Kovalchik Park, and other public properties. The issues currently on the table are the leasing of Duff Park to Olympus, who is also the initial bidder on the leasing for Murraysville Community Park. Olympus has 807 violations on file with the DEP from the last 7 years alone, including 22 at the Titan well pad, which is the one that will be used to frack under Murraysville Community Park.
Ma'am, you're at 4 minutes. Can you wrap it up?
Oh, sure. Okay. At any rate, it looks like, okay, Olympus quickly made some misleading statements to the municipality. They omitted information, as you know, and led the administration to believe that they've done their due diligence regarding ownership of gas rights under Duff Park, which is subsequently found later to show that they had not. And there's one more point I want to quickly make. Cut to the chase. Please reject any bids from irresponsible bidders. There is a concern with the gas rights at Kovalchik Park, which, if you've not heard about, I'm happy to talk to you separately about. The bidding process lays the groundwork for moving forward on the leasing, but please respect the community and please take our parks off the market. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, thank you. That brings us to Laura Lewis.
Thank you. My name is Laura Lewis. I live at 3433 McIntyre Drive here in Murraysville. I'm a Murraysville resident, a homeowner, but most importantly tonight, I'm here to talk to you as a mom. I have kids aged 3 and 5, and I'm urging you not to lease the parks for fracking. This is where my kids play, where we walk the dog, where they go for soccer. What certainly got us through a pandemic, where we had very limited contact with other people. I don't want any industrial activity in our parks. You would think less of me if I told you I took my kids to play at an industrial site. It's not what our parks are for, but certainly not an industrial activity with the well-documented health risks of fracking, up to and including double the risk of childhood cancer, leukemia, up to 2 kilometers from the site. That's a huge part of this community, within 2 kilometers of a fracking site. And so I beg of you, for our kids, our parks are not for sale.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. That brings us to Meredith Jankovics. Did I say that right? Close?
I mean, I respect the fact that you tried.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. No one ever gets it. Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith Juknowitz, resident of Murraysville. I live on 4715 Logan Ferry Road. And similar to Laura, I'm also here today as a mother. My kids are 1 year old and 4 years old. My family moved here under 3 years ago, and we really took our time deciding where we wanted to live. We really wanted to pick a place that had a great school district, that had natural parks and places for us to go, as our family is very into the outdoors and avid hikers. And we fell in love with Murraysville Parks before we even moved here. It's why we picked this area, amongst other things too. And my two sons, as I mentioned, have spent their entire lives so far playing in these parks. They love the playgrounds. We go hiking in Duff Park twice a week at least. My oldest son had his 4th birthday at one of the pavilions. We have spent just countless hours there, and they love it. While they love everything about the parks, their favorite part is probably anything with water. So they love walking in streams, playing near ponds, splashing in even mud puddles if they can find it. And all of this is why I found it so alarming that this council is considering these motions to lease the oil mineral rights and allow extraction to happen in our parks. Spaces that are meant to provide this safe and healthy space for individuals and families to get this exercise and recreation, to be in nature, and to gather together. The natural resources at our parks should not be up for sale, especially for companies that have hundreds of environmental violations. So even with gas and oil extraction happening below the surface, there are documented environmental health impacts. And Laura mentioned earlier about Deer Lakes Park, and that actually stuck in my mind too, as I followed that really closely as a former Allegheny County resident. But even though that extraction was happening below the surface, fracking chemicals were still found in the water. And I remember very clearly going there before fracking started and after, and I wouldn't even allow my kids to play near the lake the one time I took them there. We immediately went home. I saw weird chemical colors and oil slicks and dead fish, and we just left. And it breaks my heart to think about that happening here. And allowing that to happen. And the fact that Allegheny County made the decision to ban fracking out of their parks, I don't understand why we're headed in the opposite direction. I want my kids to be able to spend the rest of their childhood in these parks, and future kids that come after them to have that time as well. I think we all, as citizens of Murraysville, our children, deserve better than that. I want to be able to trust that we can go to the playground, we can ride our bikes, we can continue our hiking, we can walk in creeks, and we can play soccer and baseball games and not be exposed to dangerous chemicals that could affect our health. This doesn't seem to align with the purpose and the mission of our parks, no matter what the financial payouts may be. So I urge the council to not put our parks in jeopardy and not accept any oil and gas leases. And I thank you all for taking the time to listen to our complaints and helping me skip out on at least one toddler's bedtime tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to Karen Kozich? Oh, great.
So I'm here, Karen Kozich, 280 Jefferson Street, Export, PA.
Thank you.
Okay, I was here a month ago. You probably remember me, so I'll try to say different things than I said last time, but I, of course, agree with the previous 2 or 3 speakers here, everything they said and more. I'm a teacher. I teach at Gateway, and I'm proud of the fact that my students are doing environmental research projects, and as an example, I went deeper into understanding what fracking is to create a Google slide presentation with them, and so I'm just going to read off that because everything here is from the National Institute for Health. And so I just did some really basic research where I said, what are the risks of fracking? What are our health risks? And I have raised 7 children in Murraysville over the last 20 years. I have grandchildren now being born here, and I have a daughter who's trying to decide whether she wants to continue living here. And I'm terrified that she will move away because she will read this research. And honestly, her husband has already done the research. He works for the FDA. He's a biomedical engineer, and so I trust that he knows what he's doing, and I did some of my own research. So fracking is the drilling into the earth and injecting a high-pressure mixture of water, chemicals, and sand at the rock layer to create cracks and release the trapped gas or oil. That's just from Britannica. What are the risks? Okay, and this is from the National Institute for Health. The risks are the contamination of groundwater and surface water by the chemicals and wastewater produced by fracking. Second risk, the emission of greenhouse gases and air pollutants from the fracking process. Third risk, the increased risk of earthquakes. I know this sounds like, ridiculous, but it's not. It's happening in places where they're fracking. Increased risk of earthquakes and landslides due to the changes in the underground pressure and disposal of wastewater. Fourth risk, the disruption of natural habitats and communities where we live by the noise, the traffic, the light pollution, and just the infrastructure that is being built with the fracking. Okay, then we go to the National Institute for Health. Like was already mentioned, a multi-year study published in 2022, just a year ago, found that children who at birth resided within 2 kilometers of one of these wells had nearly twice the chance of developing acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is the most common form of childhood leukemia. So they have twice the chance of getting that. They also found in 2021 a study linked cardiovascular risks with unconventional gas development. The study found increased hospitalization rates for acute myocardial infarction, which is also a heart attack, okay, among middle-aged older men and older women. So the risks are for children and older people. And this study was done in Pennsylvania, okay, by the National Institute of Health, in counties that overlay the Marcellus Shale. Okay, that's where we are. And just a couple more. In Texas in 2018, a study found that women living near hydraulic fracturing sites in the Barnett Shale area of Texas had a risk of extreme preterm birth. In 2017, a study of nearly 24,000 primary care patients in central and northeast Pennsylvania near residential unconventional natural gas development was associated with increased nasal and sinus symptoms, migraine headaches, and higher levels of fatigue. And the last one, a 2016 study published in JAMA Internal Medicine evaluated risk of worsening asthma for more than 35,000 asthma patients living near these unconventional natural gas development sites in Pennsylvania. Researchers found such activity near patient residences was associated with increased chance of severe asthma, okay? So we've got the water, we've got the air, we've got the land. All 3 things I teach about in 7th grade, we're spoiling all of it, and we're causing proven health problems with this. And I know it seems like it's a lot of money, but let's not sell out and risk our children's health and our grandchildren, my grandchildren. Okay, so I am on their side. Please stop this now, and let's not be known as an industrial site. That's not what Murraysville is. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, that was the last individual who signed up. For the good of the order, is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to liaison comments and committee reports. Let's start at this one this time. Jamie?
My mic. The next school board meeting is this coming Monday, November 20th. It's a joint meeting of the whole and board meeting.
Awesome. Thank you. Jamie?
We had a meeting last Thursday, November 9th. I was not able to attend because of work, but I have a report, and certainly Ms. Milchek is welcome to chime in as well. Essentially, we are at 5.5 year-to-date return. Our domestic U.S. equity was noted as being the largest driver of portfolio performance. Although real estate was the best performing asset class for us in 2022, it's been fairly flat this year due to rising financing costs for folks. And we adjusted some of the large cap equity in the 3rd quarter in order to harvest gains and try to generate some cash for funding the private debt contribution, which has had very strong positive returns for us this year. Ms. Milchek, do you want to add anything else? Or not? You don't, no, you don't have to.
I can just mention that since the end of the reports, they've noticed that things were increasing and actually doing better and recouping. Now, I don't know from the time that our meeting took place last Thursday to now, but at that point, the update was still positive from the end of the quarter. And aside from that, it was just decided that we're going to switch and get, instead of reallocating the funds for the real estate, that we're going to process, is this right? Receive some of the revenues next year to support the pension payments instead of it just building and having more of an offset allocation.
Yeah, and the real estate investment trust investments, yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, awesome, thank you. In-depth report, you weren't even there. Tony?
Medic 1 meets tomorrow night.
Awesome. Carl?
Yes, the Parks and Recreation Foundation meets this coming Monday. There was a meeting of the Planning Commission yesterday. The first item on the agenda was Choice Properties, which is the addition of a beer store, and that's at the Sunoco station, the intersection of 22 and Berlin Farms. It was passed to council, and it was just indicated that the council should be looking at the parking just to make sure that things are fine there. There was a submission by Caliber Collision for the building of an auto body facility, and it would be in size 12,476 square feet, which is about 110 feet on a side, just to give you an idea of the size of it. It would be on the, let's see, on the north side of Route 22, across from Berkshire Drive, in that area. They're also looking for the subdivision of 8.83 acres into 2 lots. The issues that were brought up, the possible issues would be noise, and this was by community input, traffic hazard. There's going to be a pond there, and it was referred to as a mosquito haven. The sewer effluent itself from the auto body, the net reduction of property values, and the possible aspect of lighting pollution. It is zoned B, and one question was to determine how long ago was it zoned B. The application was accepted, and there will be considerable discussion in December 12th. So the application is accepted. It doesn't mean the project itself has been accepted. The third item was considering Summerhill Phase 2, a expansion of 61 units. It was determined by our Director of Planning that it's actually, quote, de novo. It's a new phase, if you will, not a phase, expansion of a phase, but a new development. And 28 of the 61 are approved from the Phase 1 approval. It was not accepted, the submission, just because there was enough information. One, they have to have a planning module submitted to the Plum Sewer Authority, which was not done. The information on the master plan was missing, and there were a couple other items, and thanks to Jim Morris in identifying that. So that was basically not accepted at this time, and that was the conclusion of the planning meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl. Jason?
The library meets tomorrow evening.
Okay, and I'll just note that FTMSA meets tomorrow as well. With that being said, we have no workshop items this evening, so we'll jump straight to Section 13. And I have a motion for 13A, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 779-23, the amended operating budget for the 2023 calendar year.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Jamie. I'm guessing we're going to JC for this.
Thank you. This is to consider the approval of what was reviewed at the last council meeting for the operating budget amendments for the council budget only. There were no amendments needed in the general fund. Should I do a review of the items again?
Just a very quick, very quick.
So there was the Lions Run acid mine remediation. A grant will be funding that. We've already received the grant money, so it'll be supported up to $500,000. There were also additional repairs needed for the traffic lights, one additional preemption, and a light processor. Both those are supported with the reduced cost of the overlay program. We had a brine pump sprayer that was in disarray and had been repaired multiple times. So that is going to get replaced for $20,000 and is able to be supported by additional real estate transfer tax funds that were received this year. And additionally, the real estate transfer tax overage that we received will also go to support 10 police department body cameras. The last amended item that's proposed was for the Kowalczyk Park improvements. These were needed because additional repairs were found when we got onto the sites. This will include paving and resurfacing the parking lot as well as installing a new fence. And these will be supported by gas royalties that were received in 2023.
Okay, thank you. Council, obviously that's the second time we've heard that. Any questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. It is unanimous.
All right, thank you, council. And I
Thank you.
actually have an updated leaflet that you can put in your book that I will pass down that'll update those numbers in the overview.
Awesome, thank you. Right, that brings us to 13B. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to advertise ordinance number 1077-23, an ordinance accepting a lease for oil and gas rights for approximately 74.2925 acres of municipally owned property, Duff Park, at tax map numbers 49-11 or 49-14-00-0-071, 49-1400-168. It's a 16.5969 acres, and 49-14-00-0-135. That's 2.548 acres, and finally 49-14-00-0-138. And the size of that is 0.2296 acres.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Jason and Carl. Obviously, this is just for the advertisement of the ordinance. Are there any questions or concerns about the advertisement?
No, but I will note for the record that I will be abstaining from both this vote and the next. And Virgil, if you can just note that I'm recusing myself as my husband represents the lessee.
Okay, so we'll make sure the minutes reflect that Mrs. Corns is abstaining from items B and C under our action items 13. With that being said, any other questions or concerns about 13B? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 13B is approved. It's unanimous. Or excuse me, it's approved, noting the abstention of Ms. Lee Corns. Can I have a motion for 13C?
Motion to
Go ahead.
Motion to advertise ordinance number 1082-23, an ordinance accepting a lease for oil and gas rights for approximately 305.9 acres of municipally owned property, Murraysville Community Park, at tax map numbers 49-07-00-0-066, 260 acres, and 49-11-00-0-103, 45.9 acres.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Tony. Again, same as the last one. This is just the advertisement. Any questions or concerns about the advertisement? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0, noting the extension of Mrs. Lee Corns. That brings us to 13D. Can I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion
Oh,
to
no,
advertise.
hold on.
I believe it's 5-0, just to want to make sure.
Oh, correct.
Riverdale already
5-0.
has that, but I
Yeah.
just want to be clear.
I'm glad you guys are on top of that. Okay, 13D. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to advertise ordinance number 1083-23, an ordinance for the municipality of Murraysville, Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, amending municipality of Murraysville ordinance number 1025-20 regarding unacceptable sanitary sewage.
Second.
Thank you, Tony and Jason. I'm going to guess this is Wes?
Yes,
Okay.
this is my doing here.
Just please give us a brief explanation.
Yes, the existing ordinance prohibits the discharge of inflow and infiltration into the public sanitary sewer system. The existing ordinance also defines unacceptable sanitary sewage. And it says that unacceptable sanitary sewage shall be as defined by FTMSA. What the ordinance doesn't do is it doesn't fulfill its enabling statutory position because it doesn't prohibit the discharge of unacceptable sanitary sewage into the sewer system. It only defines it, and it only prohibits I&I, but it doesn't prohibit the discharge of other substances into the system. So this came to light when we started doing the FOG program, which is the Fats, Oil, and Grease program, down at FTMSA. So we think that before we can enforce that program, we need to amend the enabling statute, so to speak, or the enabling ordinance, so FTMSA could enforce the FOG provisions, and if a property owner doesn't comply with those provisions, go before the local district justice.
Okay, awesome. This is somewhat of just a correction. I'm sure we all assumed the ordinance already did this, so any questions or concerns?
Good catch. Good catch, good work.
Okay, with that noted, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. It is unanimous. That brings us to 13E. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to advertise ordinance number 1080-23, the 2024 tax ordinance.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie. And Jamie? JC?
Thank you both. The tax ordinance is required to be approved each year prior to the adoption of the annual budget. This is to advertise that ordinance prior to it coming to the table for approval.
Okay.
Tax rates will remain the same for 2024.
Okay, this is us passing a tax ordinance with no tax increase. Questions or concerns, or I should say advertise. Questions or concerns from council? Wes, did you have? Okay, sorry. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to 13F. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion, consider authorization to advertise ordinance number 1081-23, the 2024 salary ordinance.
Second.
Thank you, Carl and Tony. JC, Mike?
Hi. This is also to advertise an ordinance that will be coming to the table later on in December. This is for the salary brackets. They're all remaining the same bracket as the past. And the only thing that should be noted is the uniform police. The CBA has not come to a conclusion yet. So the bracket or the wages that are in here are based off the 2023. When the CBA concludes, this will get updated.
Okay. That all makes sense. Questions or concerns from council? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. That brings us to 14A. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to advertise ordinance number 1076-23, an ordinance adding chapter 219 to the code of the municipality of Murraysville to regulate short-term rental units within the municipality and establish penalties for violations.
Second.
Thank you, Jason and Jamie. Obviously, this is to advertise the ordinance that we've been talking about for quite some time. Mike, anything to add?
The direction of council, we did amend the ordinance to remove the restrictions with regard to zoning districts. We updated the definition of a short-term rental to take away the language indicating it must be a primary residence of the owner. And lastly, we did amend the maximum occupancy for overnight guests from 8 to 10. And those were the three changes that were made to the original version that's been discussed at length over the last several months.
Okay. Any questions or concerns?
I do have a question. Michael, as far as not being the primary residence, does it have to be a secondary? Meaning, can this property be owned by non-residents?
Yes, correct. So the language in the original version indicated that it must be the property owner's primary residence. However, that doesn't take into account an individual who may own a property which is not their primary residence, say a rental property. They may live somewhere else in another community or within this community, but they choose to rent that out as an Airbnb. In the prior version of the ordinance, in that instance, someone who resides within the community but owns a different property in the community and rents it out on Airbnb, that would not qualify under the ordinance, and the different provisions within the ordinance would not apply to that property. So we took out the language regarding primary residence so that it was a catch-all to any property being rented out in the community on a short-term basis. That way we could uphold any enforcement under the ordinance. So it kind of broadens the scope of the ordinance to allow us to enforce against anyone using their property as an Airbnb, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It does. I know I've had experience, not with this particular situation, but several years ago working with a state representative and in New Kensington, and there was a real problem of absentee ownership. And I have a concern about non-residents owning property here, but not, and basically conducting it as I see it as a business. So that's my concern.
Fair enough. And I would say to that, the prior version of the ordinance would not have allowed us to enforce the ordinance itself against that property owner because it would not have qualified under the ordinance. That was not their primary homestead, and so therefore it would not fall under the ordinance at all, and we wouldn't be able to enforce the restrictions within the ordinance. In this case, it would allow us to address a concern like that. An owner that is not from the municipality or doesn't live here but owns the property and rents it out now would fall under the ordinance, and we could enforce the provisions of the ordinance against that person. So this would, in some ways, provide a safeguard to the concern that you have.
I have a question. Sure. This is a question for some people that ask me. So that means anybody can move into Murraysville and buy a house by you, or you, and start it as a short-term rental.
Correct.
Right? So there's no restrictions now. They can put it anywhere in Murraysville. And they can buy a house. If they live in Florida, they can buy a house in Murraysville and rent it out for a short-term rental.
Yes, that's correct.
And eventually, there could be homes all over the area then, or they're renting their properties. Is that right?
Certainly a possibility. I would say that based on the dialogue with council in the past, if it started to become problematic within our community, we certainly have the ability to revise the ordinance or update it as we would see fit.
And the only way it won't be a business is if they don't put a sign out front.
Well, I think there are other
right?
criteria. There are other criteria as well, but yes, I mean, the possibility of an outside individual purchasing a home and renting it out on a short-term basis is permissible under the ordinance, but it was also permissible prior to the ordinance being considered as well. So
They could put a for rent sign out there.
sure, just as they could now, yes.
I will say to both of your concerns, that was something that maybe you remember when I first joined the Planning Commission, I was very concerned because I was learning about the Westmoreland GIS viewer. And I thought, oh, I wonder who owns all these properties around my house. I wonder who my neighbors are. And then I started to see that there were company names, business names, commercial names that owned a number of houses right in my neighborhood and all over our community. It's not new for businesses, for companies to own and to rent property in our community. What I like about this ordinance is where we didn't have protection before, we have the new piece about the person in charge. So even if that owner lives in Florida, they're required to have a legal agent, a person here within 10 miles of the property that they have a permit for, and that person's name has to be on file. So even if we have an absentee owner, somebody else who's representing them legally is still on the hook if there are problems. And now we have protections to enforce if they're needed where we did not have those before. So I really appreciate that piece here and think that it's great to have the protection. I don't see us ever becoming a huge tourist destination personally. We just don't, we've got a lot of amazing amenities, but we've got amazing amenities that attract residents. We don't have amazing amenities. If we have a beach somewhere, I'd love to find it because I haven't seen it yet, or the things that really draw people a lot in a tourist capacity. I don't see this becoming a booming business because the demand is simply not there. People have had the ability to have Airbnbs and Verbos throughout Murraysville for as long as those businesses have been in existence, and we've only had a handful. They've always had the right. We didn't have any protection against it. They still have the right, but now we would have protection with this ordinance. So if it hasn't boomed before, when they had the right to have short-term rentals all over the place, I don't foresee that changing. If it does, thankfully, we still have strong council members here. I think we'll continue to have a strong council even after. We've got to find something else to do with our Wednesday nights, Tony. So I feel like that the person in charge.
Only the future will tell.
So,
Okay.
that piece.
Thank you.
I did have one other comment / request. I just want to really express how much I appreciate the work that you guys have gone through because we've gone in different directions for you. Perhaps it's an oversight, or perhaps I'm just being overly picky. But when we changed the zoning requirements and restrictions on page 1, it now reads under section 219(2)(c), use is only permitted in all zoning districts. You see right where I'm going with that. Yeah, Jamie and I were talking about that.
Yeah,
Maybe
we
that
were
was left over.
concurring on that one.
Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I just have, like to make I do agree with the protection that we're getting within this ordinance. I think it's needed. A couple questions. It does put some strain or some responsibility onto the code office, enforcement officer. Do we deploy those type of folks on weekends when these are likely to be rented?
No, the onus on the code officer would primarily be for the registration purposes, inspection purposes, things like that.
Okay.
If we had a property acting as an Airbnb, a short-term rental over the weekend, and there were problems, it would probably be a police matter at the outset, whether it be a noise violation or something like that, and then ultimately then it would turn into a code issue from an administrative standpoint on the back end. So
Okay.
we would, obviously investigate it and address the concerns or potential violations at that time. But the code officer wouldn't be hands-on, on a daily or a weekend basis.
So just running through a scenario, you get a noise complaint and the police are called, they go to the scene and there's 50 people, they document that, and then the municipality with the code officer would take that into consideration and form a violation against the owner.
Correct, yeah. The first step would be to determine whether they are a registered short-term rental, and then go through the process of determining whether there was a violation, what that may be, and how that fits into the ordinance, what type of violation it might be.
Okay.
To clarify, nothing would stop police from enforcing, just because there's the second piece with the code enforcement. Police are still going to enforce. If there is an issue, they're still going to enforce it on the scene if that's what's needed.
Sure, yeah, if there's any, criminal or police disturbance, so to speak, then yes, they would be able to enforce.
Have we had police called to any of the short-term rentals that we've had over the years?
I don't know that answer. The only thing that I do know, again, I think it's been mentioned before, but whenever this discussion kicked off a number of months ago, there was a complaint about a property being used as a short-term rental. I don't know if the police were called in that instance. I know that it was reported back to us, the concerns about the volume of traffic, the amount of individuals at the property, the turnover itself, but I can't say that I know whether the police were called on any particular event.
And that place is no longer a short-term rental.
I don't believe it is listed right now. From what I understand, that property owner would travel south in the winter and rent it out during winter months, during the colder months, but then come back to this area as home for the summer. So over the course of a lot of this discussion, that property has not been listed. There may be a possibility that we now see that property pop up on the short-term rental sites. And again, they would fall under the
So now we have protections where we didn't before. We have multiple protections in terms of traffic, number of vehicles, parking, number of occupants.
That's correct.
safety in the home.
And us having a permit on file, knowing exactly who owns it and having somebody else nearby. Thank you.
Okay. Any further thoughts or comments? All those in favor of the advertisement, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to 15A. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to authorize staff to file a local share account grant application with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the maximum amount of $1 million to replace the Logan Ferry Bridge.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Jamie. Pretty self-explanatory. Mike, is there anything you want to add?
No, the bridge replacement would be a $2.8 million project. So we're trying to look for any way to offset some of those costs. In this case, it's a $1 million grant application, and the remaining amount, if the grant were awarded, the remaining amount would be funded through the capital improvement program.
Awesome. And again, thanks so much to you and staff for finding these alternative funding sources. So with that being said, questions or concerns from council? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 15A passes. Can I have a motion for 15B, please?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize staff to file a local share account grant application with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the maximum amount of $1 million to replace the old William Penn Highway Bridge.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Jamie. Again, self-explanatory. Any thoughts or comments from council? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Any old business from anyone this evening?
I have a question about a couple of the public, or one of the public comments that was made tonight about the contamination of surface chemicals or surfactants, whatever were found. In any of the fracking that is done here, are the companies required, or does Murraysville monitor any surface chemicals or anything like that? Is there a requirement for them to essentially police themselves?
No, I think that the DEP is responsible for all of those efforts, all the monitoring.
The DEP is,
and
okay.
enforcement, yes.
Okay. And are we given reports that the DEP finds?
Yes, so we get violation reports or notices. We get, and I don't know the interval in which they come in, but we are notified when there are either reports or violations issued.
And of those 22, I believe it was brought up, Titan well pad violations, how many do you know were clerical?
I don't know offhand, but I can say in reviewing those violations, and I did this a month or two ago, a lot of those were administrative, clerical administrative violations. I don't know if it was all of them, but it was the majority, if not all of them. So most of them were related to some of the administrative requirements that are applied.
Okay, because it sounds so terrible when they say that there have been 800 and some odd violations, or 22 at the Titan well pad, but they're not actually physically environmental violations that are occurring.
I would
just
agree.
wanted to point that out.
I may add into there, as I'm kind of thinking it through and answering off the cuff. I think that some of the other violations, because I say if not all, but I take that back, because I would say that I think I remember some of them being related to like landscaping, vegetation, and some of the installations for from an environmental aspect. They have to install so many pieces of vegetation, trees, things like that. And I think some of it related to that as well. So again, I don't know if that would qualify as administrative or clerical, but they did not seem to be or appear to be substantive violations for health-related matters that are of concern and certainly important to our community.
And have we ever had any seismic activity here in Murraysville relating to any of the well pads that you're aware of?
I'm not aware.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, in that same vein, I was under the understanding that there have not been any citizen complaints about during the construction of the Titan well pad. Is that correct or incorrect?
Based on my time here in the last year and a half, we haven't received any complaints. Now, I know that obviously it's been a long and ongoing process with the oil and gas companies, and There certainly has been feedback in the past. I can't speak to what that was or to what extent they are complaints or again, general feedback to the municipality. But in my time here, I have not received any complaints about the activity that they've been conducting.
Lighting, noise, and so forth?
No, nothing like that. I think a lot of that, and again, I only have a small window of time that I've been in the municipality, but I think that some of the initial complaints from the initial well installations probably were resolved throughout the process of approval for the most recent well pads that have been installed. So I haven't received any complaints. I'm hoping and thinking that a lot of that was vetted throughout the planning and approval process.
I have one additional question. Some of the complaints that were brought up were that it would essentially be an industrial type site at these parks, but all of the mining, so to speak, is 2 kilometers underground and it's coming across. Is that correct? So there will be no industrial type, like if we did not, not that we would ever not disclose that we were doing this, but if for some reason nobody knew about it, they would never know about it. Is that pretty much correct? Because there's nothing to see. That's 100%.
That's 100%
Okay,
correct.
just clarifying that. Okay, thank you.
Along the same subject of the drilling and the wells and the royalties and so forth, actually we have a gentleman very well versed in this sitting in the back there, Fred Schiffer. And what I became aware of is that, one, there's a gross, meaning the royalties he was paying, there's a gross amount, and then there's the check that he gets, which is about 26% less. So I guess I would ask, maybe even Wes would be the one who could comment on this. Our offer is for the gross with no deductions?
The proposed lease is the gross at 18% without deductions.
Okay. Which is a plus.
That's a significant plus.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Okay, any other old business from anyone? New business? Okay, hearing none, we do have an executive session tonight. There will be no action items coming out of that executive session, so I just need one more motion, please.
A motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.